Well, it's a privilege to be asked to speak here today on this very solemn occasion. I was telling the chaplain before, I've never done this before. Normally, for the past several years, I'm in my house by myself on this day. So bear with me so I can get through this. You know, I feel very strange being a keynote speaker today. I'm no one special, and I'm just like you. You know, we firefighters, EMTs, police officers, and for that matter, all first responders do our job when called upon, no matter what that job is. Like many of you, I can remember where I was that morning. I too was looking at my TV after the first plane hit. I'd been on the roof of the World Trade Center many times before that day while entertaining out-of-town guests. Gosh, we saw many an airplane below us as we saw a most magnificent view of New York City and the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. I thought to myself, man, how could a pilot not see those towers? Then, the second plane went past the tower, turned, and deliberately crashed into the second tower. Within 2 minutes, my pager went off. You see, my fire department was right on the border of New York City. And I knew we were going. We assembled at our respective fire stations and were dispatched to a staging area in Shea Stadium a few miles away. All 71 departments in my county, Nassau County, sent an engine, a ladder, and an ambulance for a total of 213 pieces of apparatus. I chose to ride our department's ambulance that day, even though I was chief, since I was a critical care EMT and thought that that would be more helpful in that capacity. Well, when we got to Shea Stadium, and that's where the New York Mets played, we heard about the Pentagon and Shanksville. But we were out of communication with the rest of the world. Thoughts of the entire country being under attack were racing through our heads. As we got the word that FDNY Chief of Department Gansey was killed, we were told to move our ambulance to a large line of ambulances. Our ambulance was separated, and we were going to head to the scene since we had all advanced life support personnel. We all had a sinking feeling in our gut, but we knew what we had to do. It was a ride I will never forget. Full speed, at maximum governor speed, through tight, winding streets with a police motorcycle escort. When we stopped, we were at another staging area in New York City, about 2 blocks from Ground Zero. We did not know what they wanted us to do. But before we opened the back doors of the ambulance, we all joined hands and said a prayer and promised to take care of each other. It was all for one and one for all. When the doors opened, we were told we were going to retrieve any overflow bodies that could not be handled by the small morgue at Ground Zero. We were to put them on an ice rink that were on the pier next to us. Well, not many bodies were found at the site. Therefore, there was no need for us to do that assignment. So, we were asked to board a harbor boat to go by water directly to the pile. Our job was to give out paper breathing masks and wash workers' eyes. Well, when we got to the scene, it looked like a scene from a war movie. Massive building damage, windows smashed, crumbling buildings for a good half-mile radius. The visibility was poor. The gray dust in the air made it impossible to see. This dust was ankle deep throughout the entire half-mile radius that the towers had once stood on. The dust was very fine and face powder consistency. When we disembarked the boat, we walked through the powder toward the pile, kicking paper the entire way. The amazing thing was that there were no desks, no chairs, no computers, no telephones. Everything, including the people, had been ground into fine face powder. But the paper survived. That was the thing that got me. The paper survived. There was dust and paper everywhere. The paper was in such good shape that the stock reports within it could be read. We saw several crushed fire apparatus and a couple of bodies being taken away in body bags when we arrived. Breathing was difficult. The paper masks we had provided very little protection. As we all know now, many of those who were at ground zero developed serious lung problems, and some have passed away as a result. The scene was very quiet. Very few of the thousands of first responders and civilian workers were talking. All were full of deep sadness, but they knew they had a job to do. We went into, and you first responders know, we went into robot mode. We buried our emotions and did what had to be done, no matter how unpleasant that was. But this became more and more difficult as we realized there was no one to save. Even the rescue dogs were depressed. When human remains were found, all work stopped at the site. Members of that firefighter's company or the police officer's precinct came and got the remains of the fallen comrade, and the entire scene saluted as they were being removed. If it was a civilian that was found, all stood quietly as the body was removed. Everyone, including civilian workers, tirelessly wanted to find anything that would bring closure to the families of the lost police officers and the 343 lost firefighters, as well as thousands of civilians. It might be interesting to note that for 2 years after that, there were remains found on window ledges, roofs of buildings, quite a distance away from the ground of the Twin Towers. For all of us that lived anywhere near there, my neighborhood included, multiple funerals daily in all communities during the 2-year period. When you saw helicopters flying over in a missing man formation, you knew it was a firefighter or a police officer. I felt guilty. I could not attend any more firefighter funerals. I too was a mess and had to extensively take critical incident stress treatment. But on a positive note, it was the largest rescue in the history of the American Fire Service. Thousands of civilians were saved due to the combined efforts of police, fire, and the Staten Island Ferry Service. And there was a huge resurgence of American patriotism. The American Fire Service greatly improve such things as unified command and interoperability. The National Incident Management System and today's modern concepts of emergency operations centers were developed. But I would be remiss if I didn't express the gratitude of all that were on the scene during those troubled times. If I didn't say, thank you. Even though you were not physically there, we knew you were with us in spirit. If we needed you at the scene, you would be there at our side without any hesitation. Let me tell you, that was what was keeping us going. The fact that we had unbending support of our fellow brothers and sisters in the fire service throughout the nation. My message to you, my brothers and sisters, is thank you. You would have done the same thing we did. There are no heroes, just dedicated first responders. Continue your dedication. Be ever vigilant. Stay safe. And remember, everyone goes home. And I ask your indulgence for a moment here for a personal prayer. May God hold the fallen in the palm of his hand. And in Jesus' name, I pray. Thank you, and God bless all of you.